For a brief, shining moment, it was the perfect horror game. Friday the 13th, the game, wasn't just another video game, it was a bloody love letter to one of the most iconic slasher franchises ever. This was the ultimate fan dream, serving up heart-pounding asymmetrical gameplay that was just as terrifying as it was fun. But then the screams at Camp Crystal Lake went silent. Not because of Jason, but because of a killer nobody saw coming, a lawsuit. This is a story of how a legal battle became the final murderer, ending the future of what could have been the greatest horror game of its generation, and how we might have hope for its successor. Picture it, 2017. The asymmetrical horror genre is still pretty new, mostly dominated by one huge title, you know the one I'm talking about. Horror fans were starving for something different, something that bled pure nostalgia. That's when Gun Media and Ilphonic kicked down the door, delivering a game that felt like it was ripped straight from a grainy 1980s VHS tape. Friday the 13th, the game, released on May 26, 2017, and was an instant hit. The idea was simple but brilliant. 7 players stepped into the shoes of terrified camp counselors, while one lucky player got to be the legend himself, Jason Voorhees. The counselors weren't action heroes, they were survivors. Their only goal was to escape, fix a car, repair a phone line, or just hold out for 20 agonizing minutes. Jason's goal? To brutally hunt down every last one of them. What made the game so special was its incredible faithfulness to the movies. This wasn't just some generic game with a Friday the 13th skin slapped on. It was a living, breathing recreation of the film's atmosphere. The maps were painstakingly detailed copies of iconic locations. Each Jason was a specific version from one of the films, armed with his unique weapons and abilities. Counselors were all familiar faces, the nerd, the jock, the final girl, each with stats that actually changed how you played. The community fell hard for it. The game was pure, unscripted chaos. Working with 6 other players to try and outsmart Jason, only for it to all go horribly wrong in a symphony of screams, was an experience you couldn't get anywhere else. You could hide under a bed, lock a door, or pop off a flare gun to try and stun him, but that sense of dread never left. Jason could smash through walls, teleport across the map, and unleash gruesome environmental kills that were a slasher fan's dream. The game was a certified hit, backed by a passionate fan base and developers who clearly loved the franchise. The future looked incredibly bright, with promises of new content, new Jasons, new maps. It really felt like the golden age of slasher games had arrived. Just as the game was hitting its peak, a legal storm started brewing that, while not about the game itself, would end up sinking it completely. The fight was between Victor Miller, who wrote the screenplay for the original 1980s film, and Sean Cunningham, the movie's director and his company, Horror Inc. So how did this happen? Well, it all comes down to a specific piece of US copyright law that lets original authors reclaim the rights to their work after 35 years. Miller argued that because he wrote the original script as an independent contractor, not a work-for-hire employee, he had the right to get his creation back. And in 2016, he filed a lawsuit to do exactly that. Cunningham and Horror Inc. fired back, claiming Miller was an employee working for them, which would mean the script was a work-for-hire and they owned it outright. This legal tug-of-war dragged on for years, casting a massive shadow over the entire franchise. For the developers at Gun Media, this was a disaster. Their license to make the game came from Horror Inc., the same company whose ownership was now being challenged in court. The problem was huge. Who actually owned Friday the 13th? If Miller won, he'd control the rights to the original screenplay, which includes the characters of Pamela and young Jason Voorhees, plus the Camp Crystal Lake setting. But Cunningham and Horror Inc. own the rights to the adult hockey mask-wearing Jason we see in all the sequels. The franchise was being legally ripped in half. How could Gun Media possibly add new content when they didn't know who to get permission from? Could they add a new Jason, a new map? Every single update was now a legal minefield. The first domino fell on June 11th, 2018. Gun Media dropped a heartbreaking announcement. Because of the lawsuit, all future content for Friday the 13th of the game was cancelled. The dream was dead. There would be no new Jasons, including the fan-demanded Uber Jason from Jason X. No new maps, no new counselors, and no new modes like the teased paranoia mode. The game, as it stood, was all it would ever be. For the players, this was a death sentence. The core gameplay was still a blast, but without fresh content, the community started to shrink. Bugs took longer to get fixed, and with nothing new to look forward to, player numbers dropped. The once packed lobbies became ghost towns, occasionally haunted by hackers who could ruin the fun with little consequence. The developers did what they could with patches, but they were fighting a losing battle. The magic was fading. The game limped on for several more years, kept alive by its most loyal fans, but the legal chaos that froze its development delivered the final blow. The court battles finally wrapped up in 2021, and the verdict was complicated. Victor Miller officially won the domestic US rights to his original screenplay, but Sean Cunningham and Horror Inc. kept the foreign rights and control over the adult Jason character. This split decision didn't fix anything, it just made the ownership mess permanent, making any big new project seem impossible. With their license expiring and no clear way to move forward, Gun Media had to make the call. On December 31st, 2023, Friday the 13th, the game was pulled from all digital stores. A year later, the final slash was delivered for this slasher. On December 31st, 2024, the game's dedicated online servers were shut down for good. While offline play is still technically around, the online multiplayer thrill, the very soul of the game, was gone forever. The community was devastated. Fans even tried to keep the game alive with unofficial mods and private servers, but those efforts were swiftly shut down with cease and desist orders from Horror Inc., a brutal reminder of the legal nightmare that had killed the game in the first place. Let me be clear, the death of this game wasn't due to predatory monetization, bugs, or balance issues. The game had some bugs and there were balancing hiccups, but the true death of this game happened in a courtroom. The legacy of Friday the 13th, the game, is a tragic one. It proved that a licensed horror game could be more than a cheap cash-in. It could be a passion project that truly respected its source material and built an amazing community. The publisher, Gun Media, went on to create the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, another asymmetrical horror game that showed their dedication to the genre, even though it also had its own hiccups. But for many, nothing has ever quite recaptured the unique terror and joy of being hunted by Jason at Camp Crystal Lake. But just when it looked like Jason Voorhees was going to stay in his digital grave, a glimmer of hope appeared. In the summer of 2025, Horror Inc. Vice President Robbie Barsamian confirmed that a new Friday the 13th movie and a new sequel game are in active development. Details are still pretty scarce. What we do know is that this new project won't involve the original developers, Gun Media or Ilphonic. Instead, rumor has it that a larger, more established studio is taking the reins, with the resources to create a huge new vision for Crystal Lake. Whether this will be another asymmetrical multiplayer game or a single-player story is anyone's guess. If it is another asymmetrical game, it has a massive challenge ahead. It's stepping into a market now packed with asymmetrical horror games, a genre the original Friday the 13th helped make famous. It'll have to go head-to-head with giants like Dead by Daylight, and prove it can deliver a polished, engaging, and most importantly, stable experience. The new developers will have to navigate the same treacherous legal waters that sank the last game. For the fans, it's a spark of hope in the darkness, a chance to finally go back to Camp Crystal Lake. The story of Friday the 13th, the game, is a cautionary tale about how creativity can be crushed by conflicts happening miles away from the code. But what do you think? What are your favorite memories of hiding from Jason? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this trip down gaming's memory lane that I'm building, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives like this. So, what killed Friday the 13th, the game? It wasn't bad design, a toxic community, or greedy monetization. It was a fantastic game murdered by a lawsuit. It stands as a tragic monument to what could have been, a great horror experience cut down in its prime. While its servers are dark, the memories of those terrifying nights at Camp Crystal Lake will live on in fans who were lucky enough to be there. And as we look to the future, we can only hope that the next time Jason Voorhees rises, no lawyer will be powerful enough to stop him.